Would you want to play a video game inspired TTRPG adventure where the players try and save the world from an evil wizard? Or maybe a fantasy one-shot about stealing a powerful magic item from a bunch of bomb-obsessed goblins? Or maybe a step-by-step guide on how to draw fantasy cities? Either way, let's take a look at some of my newest TTRPG zines. I just added these 5 new zines to my online shop. Link in the description. I thought it'd be fun to explore them a little bit with you. Starting off with Astrolin Odyssey. This is a original Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, a little bit of Legend of Zelda inspired system neutral adventure. It's split up into these 3 zines that can be combined to create an entire campaign. The first zine is Astrolin Odyssey Dracon's Curse. This is the evil wizard Drakon on the cover. This is sort of like a backstory and setup to the adventure. So it's got the history of Astrolin and how Drakon came to try and take over the world, but was stopped by this heroic character named Eldrick. It has vocation and forge quests. It's this sort of mechanic that helps the players create a shared backstory. So they choose a vocation and go on this quest together. They get some initial rewards, and then they return to their home of Solgard. And there's this encounter that happens that kicks off the whole adventure, puts them on the road to exploring all of Astrolin before confronting Drakon in his floating castle. The rest of the zine covers rules for exploring all of the locations on the map and how more and more monsters pour into the world as the game goes on. And of course I had to include a fun random encounter table for even more fun story stuff to happen. If you get this first zine, it also comes with a fold-out map of Astrolin that you can use at the table to, kind of track the player's progress as they explore. Okay, the next zine is Astrolin Odyssey, The Ruinous Voyage, and this book outlines all of the different places the players can explore. So there's a bunch of towns and villages like Burrow Hill. This is a doggo village that has been overrun by a bunch of angry slimes. There's dungeons and wilderness places to explore like the Slime Swamp. The players can get a lot of information from the Slime King about Drakon and what he's up to. There's a Ghost Town, Old Celestry, and a Haunted Manor dungeon. There's a Wizard City where players can help them out and get a bunch of fun magic items. There's a ruined city that's been overrun by monsters, but is also hiding an important item for the players to find. There's a druid town in the forest, up in the trees, and a fear cave dungeon that plays on the fears of the player characters. You can't have an old school Nintendo adventure inspired game without a water temple, a sunken temple that has a fun raising and lowering of the water mechanic and a petrified dragon inside. Speaking of dragons, there's the Dragon Cliffs that's patrolled by this angry red dragon, and Durinstone is the dwarf city under the mountains. There's also a volcano dungeon where you can rescue the prince of the dwarves. And then of course there's Drakon's floating castle, the final dungeon of the adventure, and the evil wizard Drakon. I'm not going to ruin the final surprise on the last page, but there's an extra cool encounter that happens when the players confront the evil wizard Drakon. Lots and lots of story happening in this Ruinous Voyage zine. And then lastly, we have Astrolin Odyssey, A Monster Draws Near. This is the sort of monster manual of the adventure. This book collects the 30-something monsters and 30-something magic items that the players can find. Each monster has its own portrait, brief description, their attacks and special abilities, and then some extra little stat things that'll help you convert to whatever system you're running. They also have a little hex icon that shows like where these monsters are most commonly found. And I had a lot of fun choosing the monsters to fill up this adventure with and then illustrating them in pixel art style. I use the classic NES color palette, so hopefully they feel like you would encounter the Dracolite or the Electrifier in a random encounter while you're exploring the game. Like I said, this is a system-neutral adventure, so there's not any stats listed out, but it should be really easy to convert to whatever system you're playing. I used a game called Heroes of Cerulean to playtest this Astrolin Odyssey adventure. I'd also recommend the game Adventure Perilous. I'll have both of those linked in the description. Both are super fun games that are easy to run. Of course, the back of the book has all of the magic items that the players can find, including the armor and weapons of Eldrick, that legendary hero. And once you combine all three books, I think you've got yourself a pretty fun, old-school JRPG, Nintendo-inspired adventure ready to run. Okay, next up we have Flick Silverpin's Guide to the Great Goblin Flight. This is a system-neutral fantasy one-shot adventure, illustrated in a way that's more typical for my Flick Silverpin guidebooks. For all of my one-shots, I like to have a reason that the players would go on this particular adventure, and in this case, if your players need to travel a great distance very quickly, that would be a fun way to insert this adventure into an existing campaign. Of course, if you just want to run a regular one-shot where the players are trying to receive a hefty gold reward from this crazy wizard here, that works too. This adventure is about stealing this magical stone from a group of goblins, but of course there are other people that are also trying to steal this stone, so you have a group of ghouls called the Shroud and a few apprentice wizards that are gonna get in the player's way as they take on this quest. There's also Scudchumble, this crazy flying monster that loves to eat goblins, and then the Big Boom crew, the group of 20 goblins that are obsessed with making explosions. So this isn't exactly a dungeon. The players will be going to this quarry where all the goblins are making their fireworks and explosives. And the fun thing about this adventure is that it's super replayable, so it doesn't matter how the players approach the quarry. Different things will happen every time you play it because you'll be rolling on these random encounter tables and seeing what happens at each location. So the combination of the specific location, the random encounter that happens, and then which goblins they're running into, or if the ghouls or the apprentice wizards or Scudchumble shows up, it changes every time. I think this is a super fun one-shot that's filled with a bunch of fun characters that you'll have a great time running as a GM. System neutral, so play it with whatever fantasy game you like. Flick Silverpin's Guide to the Great Goblin Flight. Next up, we have Flick Silverpin's Guide to Drawing Cities. So this isn't an adventure like the other zines I've showed. This is a guide on how to draw city maps, just like this one. And drawing a map like this might look like an intimidating endeavor, but I say if you can draw a circle, a rectangle, a line, and make some dots and squiggles, then you can draw a map that looks just like this. You just have to follow this guide. So you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to have any experience drawing really at all. Like for real, if you can write the alphabet, you can draw a map that looks like this. The guide has recommendations for tools to use, and then it has step-by-step instructions on how you're going to illustrate this map. So you start by making a list of locations, and then you learn to draw the different icons. There's instructions for how to draw each icon. It's all really simple and easy to follow along with. And then there's instructions on how to start sketching your map and progressively getting more detailed as you go, but it's still all really simple drawing. And then there's advice on how to finalize your map and label your map. It's really simple, straightforward instructions, easy to follow. If you want to learn how to draw a fantasy city map, check out Flick Silverpin's Guide to Drawing Cities. Like I said, all of the zines have been added to my online shop. Link is down in the description. I got a bunch of other stuff there too to check out. If you'd like to get the digital version of any of these zines or a bunch of my other adventures and guidebooks, you can sign up for my Patreon at the hero tier or higher. That's the best way to support me and get the most bang for your buck. All right, I hope these zines seem cool and maybe they even inspired you to create your own adventures or get started drawing fantasy maps. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!